Hello and welcome to the Crimson Misery Podcast, episode 28. My name is Will Rainbolt. I hope you all are doing well on this Super Bowl Sunday, February 9th. If you are listening on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts, consider rating the show 5 stars. If you are watching on YouTube, like, subscribe, comment down below. You can also email me at crimsonmiserypod@gmail.com. So let's get right into it. We have a lot to talk about on this very super weekend for not just football, but also we had some really, really good college basketball action. So just wanted to start off with a little Big Ten action. Ohio State upset Maryland on Thursday. Bruce Thornton had 31 points, 6 assists, 3 steals. When he gets on fire, like he did against Kentucky and like in this game against Maryland, Ohio State can be a really, really dangerous team. They've also had a lot of ups and downs this season, but beating Maryland's pretty good because Maryland's a really good team. Julian Reese had 24 points to lead the way for Maryland, but another big win for Ohio State. They need some more of these wins if they want to make the tournament, but really good overall. And then Purdue on Friday defeated USC at home, 90-72. A big, big win for them. It always it's like aside from Desmond Claude, USC just really doesn't have a ton of like recognizable names, maybe aside from Wesley Yates, but yeah, Claude didn't even play this game, so it really, it really doesn't like there's nothing really notable to me about USC aside from Eric Musselman as their head coach. I suppose, but they're just sort of one of those teams that exists in the Big Ten currently. But yeah, so Trey Kaufman-Redden had 24 points, uh, 10 rebounds for another double-double for him. Braden Smith only 9 points, but he had 13 assists to lead the way for Purdue, 14 points for Fletcher Lawyer. So Purdue needs to keep winning these games in order to stay atop the Big Ten. And right now they are. They're a half game ahead of both Michigan State and Michigan. So Purdue is still a juggernaut in the Big Ten Conference, as they have been the past like 10 years or so. And then the other ranked matchup on Friday, St. John's takes down UConn 68-62. This game was funny for a lot of reasons. First and foremost, obviously, Rick Pitino has been a right, like he's always been UConn's main rival, back when he was, especially when he was head coach at Louisville, and Louisville and UConn were both in the original Big East. Um, it just always has seemed to he's just always seemed to have UConn's number, and I guess he it keeps up because St. John's, his newest team, wins 68-62 on the road. UConn, after beating Marquette this weekend, has lost to St. John's. They are now 8-4 in the Big East. St. John's is 12-1. They have pole position in the Big East right now. The only team that realistically, as of right now, that has a chance to catch them is Creighton. And I didn't expect to be saying that early January, because Creighton has really come alive these last few weeks. So RJ Lewis, despite not hitting a three-pointer, seemingly made every clutch shot that he took. He had 21 points, 10 for 21 from the floor, and Kadari Richmond had 12 points. Simeon Wilcher had 11. Same with Zuby Ejiofor, who also made some clutch free throws down the stretch. Um, St. John's was very clutch at the free throw line. And then in terms of in terms of UConn, man, Liam McNeely's back. He's back, and Saint UConn still lost in spite of his presence, because that doesn't necessarily mask the other issues that UConn has. Like, they were better at defending the three in this game, but they themselves were also not great from the 3-point line. And like they did in the Marquette game, but they got away with because Marquette um, was very ineffective from the floor. UConn turns it over so much. They turned it over 22 times this game compared to just seven for St. John's. That was pretty much the reason they lost this game. Um, and again, just the fact that St. John's has a lot of size and strength around the rim, and that's a glaring weakness for UConn. Um, Aside from Samson Johnson and Terrace Reed, they really don't have that good of a shot blocker, or like a necessary rim protector like Donovan Clingan was. And it just you can see that it has really hurt UConn this year. And even their forwards like Alex Caravan or Liam McNeely. Granted, I know it's McNeely's first game back, but they are not like they don't offer much in terms of interior defense or resistance to teams driving against them. And especially if they can get Samson Johnson in foul trouble. He had 4 fouls. Terrace Reed had 3 fouls. It really hurts UConn, and it burned him this game. So great win for St. John's. I always it's always funny seeing the broadcast cut to Dan Hurley. He was because UConn built like I want to say they were up by like they were close to like 15 point they were up by like 15 at one point, and St. John's was like slowly cutting into that deficit, and UConn was playing like way too up tempo for their own good, especially against the St. John's team that has really been good at defending um, up tempo teams. Dan Hurley was like, you could read his lips. He was like, "Slow the fuck down." He was like yelling at like Hassan Diarra and Solo Ball, like just like you all need to like actually like play some half court like at some point in this game. And um, yeah, it really whatever they were really trying to do in the second half, I'm not sure what that was because yeah, this St. John's team is really difficult to play against, especially defensively. St. John's is currently second in defensive efficiency, only behind Tennessee on Ken Palm. So that is something to really watch out for. And I just it's super important not just in the Big East race, but especially because St. John's is still trying to get a top 4 seed. I think this win puts them there for now, but yeah, it definitely depends, I think, on what happens in the Big East race. Again, St. John's is now 12-1. Creighton is 11-2. I'll get to them in a moment in their game against Marquette on Saturday. Um, but St. John's is in a really good spot right now. They just have to keep winning, and this was one of their tougher tests on the season. So, especially in Big East play, where it's not a fantastic league from top to bottom. Um, but I also wanted to mention one of I think everyone's favorite accounts to dunk on is a Yukon fan who has been at it for nearly 15 years called No Escalators. This dude, I mean, granted, he loves making fun of Indiana, and I get it, but like he has been a jinx this year. He's a troll, and I don't really engage with him all that much, aside to from everyone else dunking on him for his uh, just his nerd like quality of um, our opponent's 3-point percentage will totally regress to the mean. We're gonna get back into it, and every time he says something like that, it just gets worse for UConn. And he he quoted a tweet during the game uh by a reporter for the New York Post saying chance of we want UConn from the student section. This was when St. John's played Marquette, and No Escalators posted a screen cap of the score on Google, where when it was 21-8 in favor of UConn, with 14 minutes to go in the first half, by the way, saying, "You morons asked for it, you got it." In the community notes on Twitter, said St. John's won 68-62. So yeah, this tweet was absolutely clowned upon. Uh just absolutely shredded by by a lot of St. John's fans, a lot of Big East fans that aren't UConn fans, and a lot of UConn fans saying, "Dude, knock it off. This is you've been a jinx on us this year." So it's been really funny to see that account eat a lot of crow because it's one of the more annoying trolls on Twitter. But at the same time, he has said he for as much shit as he talks, he does like want to take it on the chin. So uh, credit to him, I guess. But that still doesn't make you less annoying. So anyway, a couple other results I wanted to get to from a lot of the other mid majors. St. Joseph's beat St. Louis 76-63. That was in the middle of Joe Lenardi giving a lot of bracketology updates, but that definitely hurts St. Louis's NCAA tournament chance. They pretty much need to win the A10 tournament in order to get in the tournament now. So, and then Dayton kind of looking like the same way because VCU comes into Dayton and beats them 73-68. This was a really, really, really good game to watch. Um, and VCU looked like they were done, but then they ripped off a 12-0 run toward the end of the game. They are now 9-2 in the Atlantic 10, trailing George Mason still. That's the only team that they're trailing in the A10, but 19-5 overall. Even if they don't win the A10 tournament, they still are looking pretty good for an at-large bid. Um, but we'll see what happens there. And a couple of Mountain West results. Boise State defeated San Jose State 79-52. They're now 9-4 in the Mountain West. And then Utah State defeated Fresno State 89-81. Uh, have bounced back after the loss at home to New Mexico. Ian Martinez had 30 points. I really hope he gets in the tournament and shows and balls out because that dude is really fun to watch. So let's move to Saturday's action. There was a lot that happened. And normally, what I like to do is go down instead of like what happened um, like when the game tipped off, I usually like to go at it based on ranking. And in this case, there is a lot to talk about because Auburn, number one, goes down to Florida 90-81. Number six, Florida takes them out. First SEC loss for Auburn, their first loss since they lost at Cameron Indoor Stadium at Duke, who I will get to very, very soon. Um, Chad Baker Mazzara ended up getting hurt in the second half. Only had 6 points. Miles Kelly at 22, Janai Broom at 18. But then Florida, even without Elijah Martin, got big contributions from Thomas Howe, big contributions from Urban Klavchar, who had, I still can't pronounce his name properly, but he had three threes off the bench. Walter Clayton had 19. Florida was 13 of 33 from three and seemingly got anything they wanted to inside. Like Auburn was providing much less resistance at the rim from guys like Janai Broom and Dylan Cardwell. They were actually looked for the first time this year, actually looked pretty vulnerable against a Florida team. And I get it. Like a lot of the time, Florida is a mismatch for a lot of teams, especially this year's team. Like Alex Condon had a great game, along with how Denzel Aberdeen also hit some big shots down the stretch when Auburn was trying to get back into it because they were down by like 21 points. Auburn was. And despite them cutting into the lead as they normally do, because Auburn is still a really good team and it was at Auburn, uh, Florida just made the plays down the stretch. Um, Florida has a lot of really good size, and pair that with a guy like Walter Clayton, who is just a clutch machine time and time again, Will Richard. And again, this was without Elijah Martin, one of Florida's best players. So the fact that Florida put on this kind of performance on the road really speaks volumes to how good this Florida team actually is. And Auburn like is still really good, don't get me wrong, but they are like they're not unbeatable. Uh, and I think today really proved it. So there are only a handful of teams that I think can beat Auburn on a neutral floor. Florida is one of them. Alabama is one of them. Tennessee is one of them. Uh, Pretty much every team I'm naming is in the SEC. Duke, obviously one of them. Houston, maybe, but even then, I believe the head-to-head matchup that Auburn already had with Houston was a 5-point win. But even then, like, still um, maybe they get a good game from them. But aside from that, like even Iowa State at this point, really just like um, it's just not looking very good right now for a lot of other teams when it comes to facing Auburn. But we'll see. Like down the stretch, I might be proven wrong there. So anyway, moving on to Dickie V's return to announcing for the first time since 2023 in the national title game between San Diego State and UConn. He returned to a pretty great game. Duke upset by Clemson, first ACC loss for them, 77 to 71. This was after Clemson lost at home in three overtimes to Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech has beaten both Louisville and Clemson, who are two of the better teams in the ACC, which makes no sense, but whatever. And this was a game where Cooper Flag really didn't get much going, like potentially or very likely the first overall pick in the NBA draft, really did not get going until the second half, where he hit three gigantic threes in the final like 5 minutes to each of them, like either tied it or gave Duke the lead. And Clemson had a response every single time. So really, really good job on them for being able to weather the storm against a really good Duke team and beating them. Because I didn't think like this was a game that I felt like Duke could lose. Um, they may not lose again during the ACC regular season at least, but this was a game I felt like Duke could lose, and they did. Um, I mean, Chase Hunter hit some big shots, had 14 points. Victor Lockheed had 22 to lead the way. And also Ian Shefflin had a really, really good presence inside. He's also a matchup headache for a lot of different teams, and Duke was no exception, especially once Maluach fouled out for Duke, their center. It really was a case of Duke also kind of like Auburn looking pretty vulnerable. Because even though Duke had a shot to tie the game, at the end Cooper Flag ended up slipping and traveling to end the game there. Con Kneppel hit some big shots in the first half, but again in the second half, the dude always seems to go quiet. It's a weird thing with him. I guess because he feels like Cooper Flag, or maybe it's because the team as a whole relies on Cooper Flag so much that a lot of them do kind of go a little bit more to the side in the second half. But I definitely think Con Kneppel had a little bit more to show in this one. They need a lot more from him. Tyrese Proctor, though, had a pretty good game with 23. They were also missing Mason Gillis off the bench. I think he was sick. So, but again, great win for Clemson. Now 11-2. They're only a game back of Duke for the ACC regular season title. But again, I just don't see Duke losing like any other game. Like North Carolina probably has the best chance at Chapel Hill, but I give Duke like a 65 or 70% chance to win that game. So anyway, that's that one. And then the new number one is probably Alabama because they beat Arkansas 85 to 81. John Calipari's Arkansas squad after winning two in a row falls at home to Alabama, ending their brief two-game winning streak, falling to 3-7 in the SEC. Alabama is now 9-1, so they are atop the SEC along with Auburn right now. Despite Zvonimir Ivisic having 27 points, playing a lot better than he had been in previous games, especially on the offensive end. Again, Alabama is just so deep. And when you have Diabate coming off the bench, having 14 points, providing more size, Labor and Philon having, not having a great game, but still providing um, some good assists. Uh, and then just another body off the bench. The same with Holloway, who had 8 points. Chris Youngblood had 15. Grant Nelson had 15. And again, even when Mark Sears isn't having a great game, it seems like it just doesn't matter. Alabama always finds a way to win, even if Cliff Amory's in foul trouble, even if Grant Nelson's in foul trouble, even if Diabate's in foul trouble. They just like keep rotating them out, and it's like you always have size. Um, with this Alabama team. And the depth is something that I perhaps lean more on, or when and I'm especially, predicting March Madness. If a team is like has less depth than other teams, I'll usually default toward that. Um, but Alabama's just been playing really well, and it really shows. Because even when their stars aren't playing as well, they just have so much talent from top to bottom. So yeah, Alabama, likely the new number one. They definitely deserve it. Tennessee might stay at number four after, because I mean Auburn has the head to head against against Tennessee, but Tennessee still with an impressive win on the road, 70 to 52 against Oklahoma. Zakai Ziegler had 17 points and 9 assists. When this Tennessee team's playing well, they are pretty scary. Um, I mean, the offense still has a lot to be desired, especially Chaz Lanier, who went 3 of 10, but had 21 points overall. And Ziegler had 17. Igor Milicic had a pretty nasty dunk in this one. That was pretty impressive to see. So yeah, great win for Tennessee against an Oklahoma team who's kind of been, one of the weaker teams in the SEC, along with, Georgia and South Carolina and Arkansas, but and LSU. But I mean that still Oklahoma at 16-7, like still has a chance, like an outside chance to make the tournament. So um, yeah, I don't really have a ton much more to say about that. I don't have a ton to say about Houston beating Colorado. Colorado is just really bad. And Houston wins by double digits. They won 69 to 59. Another big win for them. Need to keep up with Arizona in the Big 12 as of right now. Iowa State, speaking of which, in the Big 12, looked like they were in free fall. They definitely bounced back with a 30-point win against TCU. Milan Momcilovic is back for Iowa State. That is huge for them, especially to provide more size. Another three-point shooter, and this was definitely a big return. He went 4-7 from three, had 14 points. Um, Curtis Jones is back to his sixth man type role. He had 24 points off the bench. Uh, I think TJ Otzelberger might keep him there for now, especially because Momcilovic is back. But this is a win Iowa State desperately needed, especially after losing, I believe it was three in a row. So they end that streak. They're back in the win column. And I don't really have much to say about that. TCU is just not really that good. Um, and then Michigan State, after trailing by 14, I believe, at halftime to an Oregon team that is really in free fall right now. Michigan State absolutely whooped them in the second half, outscoring them 50 to 24. Um, Look, Jackson Shelstad had 18 points in the first half, but he only finished with 22. Um, and it really showed because Oregon was just cooked in the second half. It's kind of that same weird deal that they've had where their offense just sort of shuts down, especially when they can't get Nate Biddle involved. Their center, it just it's a really tough watch for Oregon and Michigan State, kind of like with Alabama, even though they struggled on their West Coast trip, losing to USC and UCLA earlier this week. They bounced back pretty nicely, especially with Jace Richardson, with his dad in the crowd, Jason Richardson, because they honored the 2000 national championship team, the last Big Ten team to win a national title. Um, I'm not counting Maryland. I've talked about this before because Maryland was not in the Big Ten when they won their national title, but yeah, Michigan State still with Jaden Dankins hitting some big shots. Trey Holloman hit some big threes. And then Jace Richardson, the star of the game, just like got anything he wanted to in the second half, especially. So this Michigan State team, even though they're kind of weirdly built, um, especially with their front court, they're all just white guys with like very similar last names: Jackson Kohler, Frankie Fiddler, Carson Cooper. Like they're still um, they're still like a decent team with their size and with their guard play. Um, we'll see when it comes to tournament time, but they are like they did play a lot better today, especially in the second half. Their offense was finally a lot more of a big show, especially against Oregon. So yeah, good win for Michigan State. Texas A&M beats Missouri on the road. Wade Taylor with the game-winning three-pointer. That dude is good. When he's healthy, he brings Texas A&M to a completely different level. And at number 10 already, they're moving on up because I mean this week they beat South Carolina. I believe that was last weekend, if I'm not mistaken. Um, I need to yeah, February, yeah. So that was last Saturday, and then this Saturday they won at Missouri, so figured they move up a couple spots, especially with a couple other upsets. Um, but yeah, this was a big win for them. And Missouri, I mean, Tamar Bates hit a big shot. He had a really I think it was him. He had a really great assist uh, to give Missouri the lead, and it was tied at 64. But that's when Wade Taylor hit the game-winning three. Um, yeah, both of these teams are really good, but A&M going on the road, being road warriors, really good win for them. So keep your eye on both A&M and Missouri. They're both really good. That was a really great game to watch. Um, but yeah. Um, great job by Buzz Williams' squad, who just dude seems to win everywhere he goes. Whether it's Marquette, whether it's Virginia Tech, and now Texas A&M. So anyway, with that out of the way, Creighton now 11-2 in the Big East. They defeated Marquette, who is definitely in free fall right now. They've lost three consecutive games to the three best teams in the Big East right now in UConn, St. John's, and Creighton. Marquette, who was 9-1, is now 9-4. Uh, yeah, Stephen Ashworth had 22 points. Ryan Kalkbrenner had 19-7. This Creighton team is back. I'm declaring it right now. This team is back, especially with how bad the rest of the Big East is. They are they are pretty much tournament locks right now. As long as they don't have like any more bad losses, this team should be fine. Despite Cam Jones having 27, dude just can't seem to catch a break with Marquette continuously losing. So that is that game. Kentucky blew out South Carolina, not a shock. because South Carolina is 0-10 in the SEC. They're the worst team in the SEC. Kentucky with a big win before they play Tennessee at home. Kentucky has already beaten Tennessee in Knoxville. So we'll see what happens there because for some reason Tennessee just seems to play better in Rep Arena and vice versa. So it is weird. But anyway, so and then Arizona now 11-1. They're tied with Houston for the Big 12 lead. Um, Texas Tech played them really well, but Arizona is playing so much better than they were at the beginning of the year, especially with Visar coming alive. Caleb Love's playing better. Um, Jaden Bradley's playing better, and this team's really good. Especially when you have a guy like KJ Lewis coming off the bench, providing you 15 points. Visar is the same way. Um, Owaka had 14 points. There's a lot to like about this Arizona team beating a Texas Tech team that is really good. Like JT Toppin had 21, Darian Williams had 17, Elijah Hawkins with 10, Chance McMillan only had 8, Christian Anderson with 17. Um, but Arizona just made a lot more plays, and um, they're just a lot more physical than they were at the beginning of the year. That caused some problems for Texas Tech down the stretch in this one, and it also didn't help them that Grant McCaslin got a technical foul with I think less than 5 minutes to go after a pretty egregious call when Arizona, I'm pretty sure, clearly fouled JT Toppin, but it was not called. So Grant McCaslin's gotten a lot of technical fouls in the last couple games. Call him Danny Hurley for how many technicals he's getting. So, um, but yeah, Texas Tech will be fine. They're still really good, but Arizona is really on the rise after their really bad start to the year. So. Wisconsin defeated Iowa. Iowa just they really just need this season to end. Wisconsin, after defeating Indiana, goes on the road and beats Iowa. So they have a three-game winning streak. They're playing better. John Tanjay had 22 points, who's playing very well as of late. Just very much all season. Same with Blackwell, but and then Mississippi State defeated Georgia 76 to 75. And then Illinois crushed Minnesota. Despite Gibbs Lawhorn not playing, I'm pretty sure Illinois, who was also pretty much in free fall, um, gets a big win. Will Riley's been playing much better. Um, Very happy to see that for him. And yeah, Minnesota again, just not very good. This was a game Illinois needed to have if they wanted to keep up in the Big Ten race. Um, oh, Gibbs Longhorn did play. He only played 4 minutes, but um, yeah, I thought I saw somewhere where he was out, um, but yeah, he may have gotten some garbage time near the end of the game. But yeah, Will Riley had 27. Kaspers Jakuchonis had 24. It's kind of a sneaky NBA draft pick, Kaspers Jakuchonis at this point. And then Thomas Slavovicic had 18 um, to lead the way for Illinois. And then despite, you know, Minnesota uh, trying to get back into it in the first half. Illinois just knocked them out in the second half, so not really much to talk about there. Kansas State, for the third consecutive year, beats Kansas in Manhattan, so that is another big win for them. Kansas State playing so much better, trying to get their NCAA tournament bid um, back in the conversation. Um, yeah, they're playing so much better. Um, Doug McDaniel had 15. Coleman Hawkins had 12. Hit a couple big threes to pull away from Kansas. They just seemingly like did not. Um, they just really never let Kansas back into this one. Um, I like again. I've talked about it before. Even when they beat Iowa State, I said that they were still suspect, and they are like not still not good. And I'm sorry, despite Hunter Dickinson having 21 points, the dude is like the dude has hands of made of butter. The dude cannot catch the ball. He is a terrible interior defender, and like like again, I'm sorry, but this Kansas team still just like despite the talent they have, they are not gelling together. This is the same thing that happened last year, and it's not, it has not changed this year. This team is still not good. I feel like I'm a broken record, but Kansas is just not a very good team. Um, yeah, I mean, look, Kansas State is better than their record shows. I get it, and it's a rivalry game, but I'm sorry, just can't Kansas. Yeah. And especially when Hunter Dickinson was like firing away from three, he made the first one and then just started bricking the rest of them. And it was just like such an eye roll. Like, yeah, this Kansas team is bad right now. Not really much else to say about it because I've said so much about I've made my thoughts very clear. Um, and then Michigan beat Indiana 70 to 67. I'm just glad there is an end to this season where Mike Woodson is done. I forgot to, or I was, when I was recording my last podcast, did not realize that the news of Mike Woodson stepping down had been made public. So that is what happened. Um, Indiana will have a new head coach. It might be Dusty May after all. I may be wrong from my last episode, but I mean, I've also been looking at Ben McCollum. I'm sorry, but I'm not on the Brad Stevens train until until it happens. Like, I'm sorry, but that just isn't what I'm going for right now. Like, I've been there 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 have been two separate conversations in my life about Brad Stevens going to Indiana. When Tom Crean was in his final like 3 years at Indiana, and then when Archie Miller got fired, it's like I'm tired of that conversation happening. I'm sorry, that just isn't where my head is at currently. So, but yeah, Michigan with Danny Wolf and Vladislav Golden, I make my head, um, my brain was not like computing for a second there. Um, really was the bulk of Michigan's offense as it normally is. Same thing with Trey Donaldson, who had 18 points as well. Um, Michigan is just a really good team, and despite like Indiana comeback was all right, but like I'm sorry, that just was not good enough. There just isn't much else to say about Indiana right now. 14 and 10. I mean, I know like Jerry Palm had them at like as one of his first four out or whatever, but like it's just gonna get worse. Like this season is donezo. Yeah, I don't really want to talk more about Indiana right now. And then Ole Miss went on the road, beat LSU. They are now 7-4. They needed a bounce back game um, after losing at home to Auburn. They did beat Kentucky, and then now they've beaten LSU. So big week for them. Um, Definitely in the right direction for Ole Miss now. Dre Davis had 22 points to lead the way, and then LSU just again not very good. So that result isn't too surprising. So and then do a couple other results. North Carolina defeated Pittsburgh 67 to 66. In the battle of mid, mid ended up winning. That's all I have to say about that. Carolina still is not an NCAA tournament to me. Um, NCAA tournament team to me is what I should have said. Um, I just don't even care. Vanderbilt defeated Texas 86 to 78. They needed a bounce back win and they got it here. So Mark Byington's team is still in the NCAA tournament conversation as of now. Akron is now 12 and 0 in the MAC well, it's actually the MAC Sun Belt Challenge that was happening. So they're still 12 and 0 after defeating South Alabama 80 to 65. Um, Tavari Johnson had 20 for Akron um, in that one. So Akron is still really, really, really good. Um, so make sure you're keeping up with that. Um, Baylor got a win against UCF, bouncing back nicely after their loss to Texas Tech. So they are back in the win column. I believe, did VJ Edgecombe return in this one? Yes, he did. He had 17. Um, they need him healthy. They need VJ Edgecombe healthy. Another NBA draft prospect that should be carefully studied for a lot of teams. He is really good. Louisville defeated Miami 88 to 78, um, keeping pace with Duke and Clemson in the ACC regular season title race. So that one is also, I mean, it's probably going to be Duke, but as long as they stay close, who really knows? Um, Little Rock overtakes Morehead State in the Ohio Valley Conference race, winning 76 to 62. Let's see. Actually, want to check. Yeah, Little Rock is tied for first with Southeast Missouri State and SIU Edwardsville in that mid-major action. Um, Cleveland State remains on top of the Horizon League 77 to 60. And speaking of the Horizon League, let's go to my favorite coach in all of college basketball. You know him, you love him, Doug Gottlieb at Green Bay. Let's go. 2 and 23. Oh God. 0 and 14 in the Horizon League, losing to Purdue Fort Wayne 89 to 74. So, yeah, in this edition of What Stupid Shit Did Doug Gottlieb End Up Doing? Um, he was in New Orleans for the Super Bowl for Fox Sports Radio, and he was interviewing a lot of really, really cool guests. Um, I mean, which if you host a radio show on Fox Sports, I mean, I would want to have a good guest lineup, um, and I would want to have some, you know, networking and make sure that I still get my name out there, and I just that's what I want to end up doing, you know? I want to make sure that in my career for sports media, I want to build my reputation up. I want to build up my image. I want to build up my likeness, and I want to make sure that I get as many amazing guests for the Super Bowl as Doug Gottlieb did. Doug Gottlieb had Brian Dawkins, Drew Brees, Puka Nakua, Bijan Robinson, great players, just exceptional lineup. This was on February 6th, and yesterday was February 8th, and he had a basketball game to coach. This fucking guy, man. It's gonna be so funny, like, if they bring him back, because, like, that means I'll get more that means I'll get more Doug Gottlieb time, man, and that's gonna be great for me. Um, yeah, I just really like it amazes me how like he keeps doing his radio show. He keeps tweeting as if he isn't the head basketball coach as a he just yeah, it just doesn't seem to phase him. Um and man, look, once a lolcow, always a lolcow, but like Doug Gottlieb just keeps doing the dumbest shit possible while he's the head coach of a 2 and 23 basketball team. By the way, Green Bay won 18 games last year. They're not winning 18 games this year. Jeez Louise, man. Yeah, I actually think you all owe me a grand apology once we start winning. Dude, it's he's the gift that keeps on giving, man. And the next time I'll get to make fun of Doc Gottlieb, which is like probably in the next podcast episode or the one after that, my weekend edition of this show, um, it's gonna still be amazing because again, like I hope he doesn't get fired, man. I really want to keep making fun of him, but Yeah, the more I look at it, the more it just is apparent that yeah, he is probably gonna get fired, which is so sad, you know. Oh well, maybe he can go back to his credit card fraud in the meantime. So anyway, with that being said, let's move on to a couple other mid-major conference races. So McNeese is now 12-1 in the Southland, 65 to 50 over Northwestern State. Um, and then Southern is now 10-0 in the SWAC after defeating Alabama A&M 81 to 68. Big wins for those schools. Drake is now 12-2 in the Missouri Valley after winning in overtime against Indiana State. Bennett starts, and but Drake needed their firepower to really show up in this one, and for the most part they did. Like Isaiah Jackson at 13, starts at 20. Daniel Abreu had 18. Tavion Banks came off the bench, had 11 points, hit some big shots down the stretch, hit some big free throws as well. Yeah, Drake just keeps winning. They're again um, like St. John's is with the Big East. Like Drake in the Missouri Valley just is in pole position uh, to win that conference. So again, another great win for them. And then, gee, I'm still laughing at Green Bay's record, 2-23. Oh man. Oh man. Bradley bounces back, now 10-4 in the Missouri Valley after defeating Evansville 80 to 74. Pretty much need to go undefeated at this point, or they win in order to even have a shot in the Missouri Valley. Northern Colorado now 10-2 in the Big Sky after defeating Montana State 73 to 66. Gonzaga now 9-3 in the West Coast Conference after defeating Pacific on the road. But yeah, St. Mary's is now 11-1. They ended up losing to a very good San Francisco team who is also right up there in those West Coast Conference standings. St. Mary's 11-1, San Francisco 10-3, and then it's Gonzaga at 9-3. So St. Mary's is in a pretty good spot. San Francisco could also make some noise, but for once, I just don't want it to be Gonzaga. I've said this before, but like finally, like something different, you know. So I mean, and speaking of San Francisco, they beat Loyola Marymount 72 to 66. San Diego State loses on the road to Colorado State in a game that definitely will decide some seeding in the Mountain West tournament. Colorado State won 68 to 63. And then, yeah, St. Mary's won 63 to 49 at Oregon State to remain on top of the West Coast Conference. But then UC San Diego uses the second half to blow out a very good UC Irvine team. This was the matchup that I was telling you all about. Um, and unfortunately, the game really, like, it was a bit more of a blowout than I wanted it to be because despite UC Irvine being top 10 in KenPom and defensive efficiency, they're not a very good offensive team. And UC San Diego really, like, they were just raining down threes, 16 of 31 from three. Aiden Burke hit a couple threes in the second half. Tate Jones uh, went 2 for 5. Kapich had three threes. Chris Howell went for 8 with 15 points. I mean, Tate Jones had 22 to lead the way. And then despite Bent Loicton having 23, he was definitely contained in the second half. And aside from him and Miles Che, UC Irvine just really did not do all that much. And UC San Diego won 85 to 67 on the road. They both teams are now 20-4, 10-2 in conference play, both with losses to UC Riverside, and the other loss was to each other. So yeah, I mean, this was a big win for UC San Diego. And say, I mean, this race, I mean, whoever gets, if say both teams like win their remaining schedule and then meet in the Big West Championship, like I know this isn't going to happen, but like conversations need to be had about like possibly the Big West being a two bid league. But at this point, like UC San Diego looked like the NCAA tournament team of the two, um, which definitely hurts to say about UC Irvine, who I also have liked watching this year. But yeah, at this point, it's just like, yeah, it is unfortunate. But um, with that said, Sunday has a few games on tap, especially with Memphis again in action, trying to avenge their earlier loss against Temple. Maryland and Rutgers might be an interesting matchup. Um, Oh yeah, George Mason also. I mean, I mentioned or I alluded to them already, but George Mason ended up beating Rhode Island at home, so they are still ahead of VCU for the Atlantic 10 title. 10-1, 19-5 overall. Both VCU and George Mason are 19-5. Um, Looking to see when those two, if those two play again. Yes, they do. They play on the 22nd. So circle that game on your calendar for college basketball fans. And then on to some women's action. Tennessee upsets UConn 80 to 76. Z Spearman had 16 points. Uh, and Tennessee finally beats a ranked opponent for seemingly the first time in forever on the women's side. Holding Paige Beckers to just 14 points, 5 of 16 from the floor. Um, they're finally hitting some shots from beyond the arc and getting some big shots around the rim too, despite Sarah Strong having 18 points. Um, UConn has definitely struggled in non-Big East play over the last few years, and this was one of those cases. So, yeah, another big win for Tennessee. Um, it's also some big news. Also, two things I forgot to mention. Well, one was about Tom Izzo. He tied Bob Knight's record for Big Ten wins in history, like for most Big Ten wins in history, and he'll surely pass him for that. Um, as an Indiana fan, like, well, I don't care about Bob Knight. So, um, and then Lauren Betts for UCLA has declared she will return for her senior year at UCLA. So she will forego the WNBA draft. She's coming back. Big, big news for UCLA, currently the number one team in the country. And yeah, just again, big news for that. And then um, today you had USC beating Ohio State pretty handily, 84 to 63. Juju Watkins hit some big shots in this game, despite not having a great shooting night. She hit them when they counted, and then Kiki Iriafen had 24 points. Ohio State only their third loss of the year, all three losses in Big Ten play, but they were definitely overmatched in this one. Um, and USC is just so much better than them, and Ohio State's still a pretty good team to begin with, but yeah, just wasn't too much, not too much else to say about that. And a lot of Big 12 scores like TCU uh, beating Texas Tech. They are now 10-2 in the Big 12, 22-3 overall. Oklahoma State upsetting Kansas State by 30 points. Um, so big win for OK State. Um, and then West Virginia blowing out Houston 79 to 51, 18th ranked West Virginia. And then Sunday, tomorrow, we have some pretty good games on tap. California will go to Notre Dame. That should be an interesting matchup. We'll see if California can play well on the road. South Carolina, Texas, 2 p.m. Very, very important game. This is another game I think South Carolina can lose. But Texas has to remain pretty sharp. And I think they can, even though South Carolina has a lot of depth. Don Staley will continue to coach very, very well. But Texas, especially, um, if they get a really good game out of Madison Booker, that will be, I think she'll be the difference, obviously. Um, Roy Harmon too, especially with the ball movement that Texas has had. Um, Texas can play pretty well, I feel like, especially because it's at home. And this is a big game for the SEC race on the women's side. So, and then Michigan State. Of course, Michigan State blew out Michigan in Ann Arbor the first meeting. Um, Definitely, definitely see if Michigan can get revenge, although I have my doubts. Tennessee at LSU, a rematch of an earlier game as well. Um, we'll see if Tennessee maybe can keep up their winning ways. Already beating UConn, we'll see if they can upset Kem Mulkey, and then UCLA going on the road to take on Oregon, trying to remain perfect on the season, still 22 and 0. And again, the news that Lauren Betts is back is again just gigantic news for them. Um, so anyway, with that being said, I think that is all for me today. Hopefully you all have a wonderful Super Bowl Sunday. And then, yeah, I appreciate y'all listening, and I will see you all next time. Bye bye.